Okay, I'm jumping in. Thanks for joining, everybody. Morning. Um, I have like four things to chat about, so I'm gonna move a little bit faster than normal today and jump right in to try to get through these. And I think they're all kind of connected, but I'm gonna start with our normal spreadsheet. Okay, there we go. So this is as of today. Again, going back to the start of the year, our key metrics here, single family houses in Indianapolis. Interesting that I would not have anticipated this from 2 weeks ago. We did see about a 260 house increase in available inventory from 2 weeks ago to today. I don't think it feels like that, and I'll explain why I don't think it feels like that. But obviously, if we saw that big of an increase, that means a lot of houses listed in the last 2 weeks, which they did. 335 houses, single family houses in Indy listed in the last 2 weeks, which is a fairly high percentage of the active inventory. So the kind of translation of that is we still don't have that many houses for sale, but quite a few of the houses that are for sale are very recent listings. We saw pending slightly increase to 1,438, which means really now for the last like pretty close to the last 60 days, but definitely the last 45 days, the last month and a half, we have hovered around a fairly similar active inventory and pending inventory, with pendings being slightly higher than actives. Okay. Just over 1,000 houses closed in the last 30 days. So that activity is continuing to increase. Cumulative days on market for those was 29, which means we have 37 days of inventory. So I would actually say, as you're trying to distill this down and maybe talk to a consumer about like what's happening in the market, we've got 60 days now where we haven't seen really big movement in any of the key numbers. So 2 months straight of roughly the same number of houses for sale, roughly the same number of houses pending, roughly the same pace. So the days on market for the houses that are closing being somewhere in the 25 to 45 days. And then days of inventory, this is so like, we talk about this number being this key connector or the combination of a lot of these things. And look at how consistent that is over the last 60 days. So once we got through the winter lag of all the stuff that had been listed over the holidays that took a while to sell, our number of days of inventory has held basically between 35 and 50 for over 2 months. So I don't know if it's necessarily good or bad that is consistent. But it is just kind of interesting that we had been really from August through the end of January, the days of inventory had been moving very quickly. But it's really held steady for the last 60 days. Interest rates, again, kind of similar. We're on a more than 2 month run where interest rates for a good credit score on a 30-year fixed mortgage for an owner occupant really hasn't significantly moved. We've been between 6.6 and 7 now for over 60 days. So more consistency there than we have seen. And I want to jump here to a chart that I think is pretty interesting. So what I'm going to go to is a national chart on housing inventory by month. I'm going to ask you to take a look at this, and if somebody will unmute in a moment and comment for me on what they see here. So what I'm going to tell you what you're looking at. This is, sorry, I said national. We're going to look at local first, and then we're going to take a look at a Time article that talks about the national inventory. So this is the Indianapolis metro area. And I want to point out a couple things here and then ask you a question, but this goes back to the January of 2017 is this data point right here. So you're going back all the way to the middle of 16. So reminder, we now view 16, 17, and 18 to be quote unquote normal real estate years. Good level of activity, prices were increasing, but not at a crazy rate. Market felt fairly balanced between buyers and sellers, kind of like everybody was happy. 19, we saw this big pickup. Houses started selling faster, inventory started going down, prices started going up. Okay. Then that got accelerated even further in 20 and again in 21. Okay, so 16, 17, 18, normal years, normal pace, fairly balanced. Prices going up at a decent clip. 19, 20, 21, prices going up much faster, inventory going down, 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 down. And then obviously the rate at which a house was selling kept getting faster and faster. So days on market kept going down. Okay. What you're looking at here is a chart of the number of homes listed. Okay, so this isn't a measure of how many homes were actively for sale at a moment in time. This is a measure of how many houses are coming onto the market month by month. Does somebody want to point out to me, like, what jumps out to them the most about this chart? 6 years of information, Indianapolis Metro, number of houses listed month by month. What jumps out to them first? If you're commenting in the chat, I can't see it at the moment. Okay, go ahead. Whoever was going to say something.
It was Leslie. Honestly, it doesn't look that different from year to year.
Yeah, that's the first thing that jumps out to me too. This is one of the statistics that is amazingly consistent. The number of houses in the Indianapolis metro area listed month by month. Two things are amazingly consistent about this. Number one is the seasonal cycle. That's what jumps out to me first. Is like, wow, the number of houses coming onto the market in January is always the lowest. It's December and January, right? It always kind of bottoms out in December, right? Going back to 16, 17, 18, 19. That's from a statistics perspective, this is just a crazy consistent variable here. Is that the rhythm of people choosing to list houses is so consistent year by year in terms of what month and how many homes are we going to see come onto the market. The second thing that is very consistent is the number of houses listed on average per month. So not only is the seasonal cycle very repeatable, but the low and the peak year by year are very similar. So you've got 2016 and 2021, or sorry, 2017 and 2021, years that felt very different in our real estate market. December of 20, 2,000 houses listed. June of 21, about 3,800 houses listed. December of 16, 1,700 houses listed. April of 17, 3,800. The variable is like inconsequential. So walk through this with me in your head for a moment. I think it's a good exercise. If essentially the same number of houses are listing every month, year over year, 2023, 2022, go back all the way to 2016. If the same number of houses have been coming onto the market month by month, what is causing inventory to go down? So just FYI, the end of this chart, if this were a chart that showed active inventory at any one point in time, we're at essentially like a fourth of what we would have been in 16 and 17. So the active inventory has been this steady decline. Same number of houses listing every month, but we have way fewer houses for sale. What's happening?
The pace at which they're selling has increased.
Yep. So they're selling much faster. So you've got the 4,000 houses or so that might list in June. Well, from 2017, those 4,000 houses that listed in June might have taken on average 3 or 4 months to sell, whereas now they're taking 1 or 2 at most, right? So they're selling faster. But if the supply is consistent, and then the supply is getting taken off the shelf faster, what's happened to the demand?
There's just
The
more people
demand-
wanting to buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a couple of you said the same thing. There's just more people wanting to buy. Population growth. Central Indiana is experiencing significant population growth and has been for a while. Low interest rates have done this. There are some demographic patterns. So the generational size, millennials are a very large generation. They're increasingly financially able to buy a house. They've reached a point in their student debt or their annual income where they're more likely to be able to buy a house. So there's all these variables that are dropping more consumers into the marketplace, but we're not seeing more houses list. Y'all follow that? It's pretty straightforward economics. The combination of rising population in our geography, rising population in a demographic age range, low interest rates have added a lot of demand, but yet the same number of houses keep listing every month. And so they go faster, they're harder to buy, prices go up. Not to try to predict the future, but if we don't see an increase in listing inventory, which we have not, the pace remains consistent. Same number of houses keep hitting the market. There's no end in sight currently to the population growth in Central Indiana. This would suggest we're going to continue to see inventory crisis. We're going to continue to see prices go up. Does it happen every month, like month over month over month? No, there's a seasonal cycle to it. But I found this chart to be very interesting in basically just illustrating how supply isn't changing. Sorry, the supply is changing, but the input into supply has been consistent, and the active supply keeps going down because the demand's going up. Did my screen just change for you guys, or do I have to stop the share and reshare it? Okay, good, it did. So I'm going to shift out here and look at a little bit bigger lens. This is an article from Time. I'll send out this link, or Haley will send out this link later today. It's a little bit dated. It's from about 2 months ago. And I thought this was a really good overview. It highlights that in particular in the largest 100 metro regions in the United States, there's just like hardly anything for sale. Oh boy. There we go. So this has a lot of text to it. It quotes quite a few realtors. It quotes quite a few lenders. And I thought this was kind of interesting. This is 10 metro areas. So keep in mind, this is counting the 100 largest metro areas. So this is looping in a lot of cities that are smaller than Indianapolis, right? Depending on how you count, Indy tends to fall somewhere in the like 20, 30th largest. When we draw the boundaries all the way up to Anderson, sometimes we get up into the 20th largest. But I thought this was really interesting. The article even references that Boston is a little bit of an outlier here. But here are the 10 metro areas with the lowest current housing supply out of the 100 largest. So the gray number, or the gray chart here, the gray bar is what that city's inventory was in 2019. And then the reddish, orangish one is 2023. And obviously you can tell several of these cities have well less than half, even like a third or even a fourth of the available homes for sale. But just read through these lists. I don't know if any of you have been to any of these cities, but I'm just curious what stands out to you about them. Rochester, Buffalo, Allentown, Worcester, Grand Rapids, Hartford, Greensboro, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and Richmond, Virginia. I skipped Boston.
They're mostly smaller markets generally. They're not your Chicago, New York, LA.
Yep. Smaller markets. They're all fairly affordable. Yeah, go ahead, Natanya.
Oh, nope, you're good. Yeah, I was going to say affordable or more, working class type town.
Yeah. I don't know if you've been to Allentown. I mean, Allentown is like the epitome of like Rust Belt mining factory. I mean, the town, if you drive through it, it looks like it's dying. Not necessarily what you would think of in terms of, ooh, I bet the population is booming and it's really hard to buy a house. And I actually have quite a few good friends from Allentown. Like, I'm not trying to hate on Allentown here first, but it just feels like a pretty good example. That I found this article fascinating from that perspective. So look at this paragraph right here. Aside from Boston, these regions aren't the ones typically mentioned in the same sentence as housing crunch. And then the article goes on. We won't dive into it. I'll send it out. It goes on to like attempting to explain why that's the case. The point that I'm trying to make by sharing both of those, sorry, hang on just a second. Okay, I'm back with you. The point I was trying to make by sharing both of those is to say, like, what's happening in Indianapolis, it's not totally unique, but we have an economy and a population that is growing at a really healthy clip. We have a state with a high credit rating, generally speaking, financially healthy state government. The job market continues to grow. Our population's growing. There are cities that are more affordable than Indianapolis that are not experiencing population growth that still have really low inventory. And I think that honestly, to me, it's a sign of concern. I want to pull up one more thing before we jump off here. So as to not leave you with just exclusively bad news. Okay. Just a second. Okay. For those that are on my team, you just took a look at this yesterday. You all probably got this email from last week. So the State of Indiana legislative session just wrapped up. IAR, which is a trade organization that you are all members of, some of the fees that you pay to MIBOR go to pay for your membership in the Indiana Association of Realtors. And one of the main things that IAR does is it advocates to the state of Indiana for policy that benefits the concept of homeownership. And my intent here isn't to suggest that you should think highly of IAR or low of IAR. That's not my goal here. But I do think this is relevant to looking at these inventory numbers. So as we see this steady low inventory, increase in demand, I think there's this question that comes up of like, well, what's the solution to this? If demand keeps growing and supply can't keep up, does this just keep getting worse? I think to some extent, the answer is yes. This is why we talk about encouraging your buyers, particularly first-time buyers, to rethink their parameters. Because if over the next 3 to 5 years, this just gets worse and they haven't entered into, like participated in that equity and value gain, they're just going to get further and further away from participating. So like at some level, yeah, I think the problem is going to be exacerbated. But I think at a more optimistic, positive level, there are some things that can be done to impact this. And if you haven't read this email, I will, I'll forward it to Haley and she can copy and paste this into the email that she sends out with the video later today. I think it's worth taking a look at because I think IAR highlights some things that they as a trade organization advocated for that passed in this recent session that all address inventory. So the state of Indiana is attempting to incentivize the marketplace to add housing units. Do I think it's going to solve the problem? No, I don't think it works like that. But I'm at least encouraged that the state is paying attention to it. And that IAR was advocating on behalf of the housing industry to basically the point of adding inventory is to make homeownership attainable for a higher percentage of the population. So I was encouraged by the fact that these were at least priorities. You can feel however you want to feel about IAR. Again, that's not my goal, but maybe take a look at this. And I'm going to give you one final aside. I've talked about this with a number of you, but if you want a little nugget for your day, this paragraph right here, I think this is worth paying attention to. Shout out to Zach Canada, who introduced me to a property tax advisor here in town, who I think has done a nice job with this. This right here. For years, overzealous county assessors used a narrow definition of what structures and improvements are part of a quote unquote homestead eligible for the protection of the 1% tax cap. Translation: Marion County, for years, has taxed carriage house apartments or swimming pools or other types of accessory development or structure on a house at higher than 1%, even though the home is occupied by an owner occupant. Okay, so in Indiana, our taxes are supposed to be, our homestead exemption should cap our taxes at 1%. The state has declared that. Marion County, among other counties, has been taxing a particular portion of someone's primary residence at, say, 2% because it's considered rental property. So I have a carriage house at my house. It's been taxed for years at 2%. I'll happy to introduce you to him if anybody wants. But the state of Indiana recently said to counties like Marion County, no, you cannot do that. And IAR helped to push for this. And I think it was a good move for homeowners. So the reason I'd say this is a little bit of a nugget, I mean, number one, it could come in handy to know this. But number two, I really pushed my team, and I think we've seen some great outcomes from this. Use this as a value add communication to your database. And it's legit. Like I'm not just telling you in theory. I did this. I got a refund of 3 years worth of overpayment of property taxes from Marion County. And now my bill this year and going forward is lower than it would have been otherwise. And when you start to add that up, it's a lot of money. And so I think this could be an opportunity if you wanted to, maybe this is a blast out, maybe it's social media, maybe you go through your past clients to figure out who do I know that has a pool or a carriage house rental structure, something like that. reach out to them individually, let them know about this. And if you could even just say like, hey, my state association of realtors pushed for this. I'm super glad that the state has enforced it, but Marion County isn't going to give you this money back on their own. You have to initiate to do it. And there are property tax groups that can help you with that. The way the one that I used works, he doesn't charge you a fee unless he gets a refund. And he keeps a third. So it's super convenient. Anyway, I think that's, if you're wondering what your like $40 a year to IAR pays for, here's one good example of that. So I'm almost at 9:30. Thanks for bearing with me to go through quite a bit today. I'm going to shoot out a lot to you through Haley. As always, if I can clarify any of this, or if further conversation with you or a client is helpful, please feel free to reach out anytime. Y'all have a good Wednesday.